You can see the obvious affection if you go to Washington for all of Ken Salazar's former colleagues in the Senate. The two of us from Florida at the time, Mel Martinez and myself, had a special relationship with Ken, and that relationship continues today. And he has taken a personal interest in the selection of this board, this commission, and of which you are now starting off your meetings. I know of two members that could not be here today. I just spoke to one of them, our former colleague, Senator Bob Graham, and then also another member of the commission that could not be here, the very distinguished former congressman and former United Nations Ambassador Andrew Young. And so I could not be prouder of you all and what you represent and the dedication that you are going to give to this commission. Ken pointed out that the history of this country is our Spanish heritage. It was that first before the English. As a matter of fact, 42 years before Jamestown, and remember they just celebrated Jamestown's 400th back in 2007, but 42 years before that, Menendez had established this oldest continuous settlement. But well before that, with Ponce de Leon coming, as Dr. Francis will tell you, probably as far north as what is today Cape Canaveral or Melbourne Beach. And we have folks down there of Spanish descent, specifically from Puerto Rico, that have engaged a Spanish sculptor who is sculpting a 10-foot-high statue of Ponce de Leon, and they're going to erect it somewhere in the vicinity of where he was first thought to come ashore after Dr. Gannon and Dr. Francis authenticate as much as they can from the Spanish archives where, in fact, it happened. But then Ponce de Leon, who was the governor of Puerto Rico, came back. And by the way, we have a substantial Puerto Rican community in Florida, almost 1 million. And they are quite excited about this because of Ponce de Leon being from and being the governor of Puerto Rico. So he came back, and he came back in 1521. This time he sailed to the other side. And what is today the vicinity of Fort Myers, and tried to set up a settlement, and got into a row with the very large, some 3 and 4 inches taller than the Spaniards, Calusa Indians, and was shot by an arrow. It became infected. They took him back to Havana. He died in Havana, and he is buried where he was governor in Puerto Rico. But that was just the beginning of the onslaught of Spanish explorers. La historia de los Estados Unidos es la historia de la Florida. And so, as you see in the history books, you see then de Ayllón came along the East Coast. We don't know that he stopped in Florida. That was in about 1526. Then along comes Narvaez in 1527, and he set foot somewhere in the Tampa Bay region and went all the way to the Panhandle. And his expedition party, there only ended up 4 surviving. Their leader at the end was Cabeza de Vaca. and he went all the way down the southwest coast of what is today the U.S. on into Mexico, where he was able to tell the story. But it didn't stop there. With others coming, then there was Hernando de Soto. 2 counties of Florida are named after him. And he came in somewhere, what is thought to be Bradenton today, on Tampa Bay. Ended up celebrating the first Christmas in this part of the world because he had a Spanish priest with him, and that was on one of the 7 hills in Tallahassee on Christmas Day. And then, of course, you know, he did the exploration all through the southeastern U.S. Luna came along, thought he was going to have the first settlement, permanent, Pensacola, 1559. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, the King and Queen of Spain came to Pensacola to celebrate this. And I'll tell you where the old settlement was. In the downtown area of Pensacola, if you go to the north, the land rises significantly. There's a big church there, and that's where he set the settlement. But 2 years later, along came a hurricane. It wiped out the settlement. It took the Spanish galleon that was anchored in the bay and shoved it way far north, almost to where today Interstate 10, the bridge going across Pensacola Bay, is. And there they found a treasure trove of artifacts, as well as the huge anchor of that galleon. That has been restored and is in the museum in downtown Pensacola. The French tried to beat us to it. Fort Caroline at the mouth of the St. Johns River. But when they heard Menendez was coming to St. Augustine, they set sail to attack. But oh, it was not to be. It was a hurricane that shoved them ashore much further to the south. Dr. Francis is writing a book that will tell you about Menendez as the French moved north on the beach, would take small groups of them behind the sand dunes and slit their throats. And then Menendez moved rapidly to the north, knowing that Fort Caroline was only defended by old men and the women. And therefore, that was the end of Fort Caroline. And from then on, 1565. So our history that we're going to celebrate in this commission is indeed not only a history, a celebration of St. Augustine, but a celebration of La Florida, as well as a celebration of the first European explorers to what is now the United States. And so this is a celebration that will focus on St. Augustine, but will spread out all over Florida. It is an exceptional time, and I'm very, very happy to have the Secretary take such a personal interest. And oh, shouldn't he? He is 8th generation Hispanic American, with his roots going back to Spain, the very people that have now settled the history that we celebrate. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes. Buena suerte, bendiendo, and thank you very much for your service to our country in enlightening our people of this exciting history that we have right here in our midst. Thank you.